fan in there. That is a static draw. Superheated air, really narrow opening that stays narrow in the chimney till it reaches about this point up here, and then the chimney opens full. So the hot air expands in a huge direction and up. Oftentimes, blacksmiths and forge chimneys would have quite tall chimneys to even improve that draft. Because once that gets going, everything goes up there. So, and I thought I'd take you right from the process of what we're starting with. So in the 19th century, Hudson's Bay Company blacksmiths didn't have enough skill to make knives. They were not making knives and chisels for trade. Their job here is much more janitorial than it is production-wise. So they're not really highly skilled tool makers of a huge variety like for carpenters. They're tool makers for like farmers and fishermen and fixing the gates and latches and various bits and pieces. And their main source of steel for good steel when they needed it would be old files. I have a number of sources of steel that I use as well. So this is a piece of a truck leaf spring, which I have cut off with an axe, and I'm about to finish just cutting off this portion here. And from that, I'm gonna make a knife like this, which is called a blacksmith's knife. There. And this is a very, very old design, continues well into today, being made here. Traditionally, this was made like this without a handle put on it very specifically and worn perhaps in a sheath here so that you could see the handle, because it demonstrated how much wealth you have to have a good piece of steel like this and to use it for a small knife, where most people had nothing of iron and steel on them. We're talking, you know, more medieval times and earlier as well. Everything is about time when you're working with hot steel, because after you can see a short period of time, I got to put it back in the fire again. Pull out of it. The only significant production schedule they had here was the spring. And that's when they were making axes, trade axes like this. They had to make about 3,000 of these a year, probably sometime between January and May. They would all be completed. And about 1,000 beaver traps, which just was the nightmare of Hudson's Bay Company that you see here. The other side of it will be one of those axes. So I think that this is sufficient material here for our knife. Another reason why you have dirt floors in a blacksmith shop. So it's coal forge, and by pumping air through it, I can get it up to temperatures up to 2,000 degrees Celsius.
Oh, wow, that's hot.
Way hotter than I need it. So about 1350 steel melts away. It's not a suitable setup to smelt iron ore. That needs kind of like a beehive, because it has to be constantly fed the iron ore for at least a 24 to 48 hour period in order to smelt the iron. All I'm doing here, the relationship between a blacksmith and iron and steel is the same as a relationship between a baker and flour. So baker bakes the cakes, it's the miller that makes the flour.
That's right.
Blacksmith makes the tools, and it's the foundrymen that make the iron and steel.
Yeah.
At least by the 19th century. A knife out of this, and I'm just gonna cut a little bit of an edge off the top here for that, just to kind of start with the
So it is like a baker then, no? They don't share your recipe.
Yeah, very much so. It is that tradition. And that's historically. It's made a complete shift now since blacksmiths so we just cut off a tip there, because you can see where we're starting to go. It just makes it easier to have the tip of the knife, so that's going to be there. So we're going to leave about this much, about half of it we're going to leave for the blade. That's sufficient for a blade for you, half the blade. And the rest we'll leave for the tails. And the more you do it, the more fixed you become in the ways that you do things. So now I'm just going to put a fuller in this knife here, right there, right about there. Yes. And this is a fun process because this is one of the two main processes of being a blacksmith, and it's called drawing out. It's taking something that is fatter and stretching it out so that it is thinner. All with the hammer on the anvil here like this, so you can see as it's calling out. It's where we get the phrase, this is a long drawn out process, because it takes
So the more you draw it out, the less time it takes to heat it up so you can work it? Is that?
Yeah, and also as it gets to this point, I'm also just a little bit more careful
Sure.
With the temperatures, because it takes less time to heat up. It also takes less time to lose heat. And sometimes I can be like, I'm just going to take one last swing, and that's the one that cracks it, right? So
Gotcha. Yep.
The range gets narrow. So it comes in and out of the fire a little more often for that. Which is, I like it with steel at this, with spring steel. It's far more durable. If you're just keeping your knife to look at and you're not going to use it, then by all means you can have some of the really high-grade steels, or someone that has a high-grade modern steel with the equivalent high-grade modern quenchant that it is designed for it. But in the 19th century, your alternatives for quenchant were water, salt water, fish oil. Actually was used quite a bit. Probably not here, but sperm whale oil.
Yep.
Could have been used as well, but that's pretty valuable. I'll have to do that to put a new one. So I'm just making a new one here. I make one about every 6 months because they usually disappear too, but I'm making one for this gentleman here too. The adage for anybody who was a blacksmith who was making knives for any purpose was quite simple. It was forge fat and grind thin. So here's where we've gotten to this point, and I'll show you where we started. So you can see what's cut out of that piece of metal, and that's where we are right now. So all that shaping is done with a hammer. So this is a piece of truck leaf spring. There's not a lot of truck leaf springs in the 19th century. Some, you're getting into wagon springs, but not a lot. But there was a lot of files which they were using. So, blade profile is fine for you there?
Yes.
So now we're going to curl this around and make the handle of it. So, I am making a knife for this gentleman here because he came to visit me at the